kindly take the discussion forward. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Zubair. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My greetings to all the participants and especially the panelist, Ms. Mansi Kulkarni, who is available with us, in fact, to share her thoughts and give an overview about how the risk management in borrowing, particularly for the SME sector, can be taken care of. So before inviting her, let me give the background of holding this kind of program. We are aware that MSME sector is a very prominent sector in the country, and there are large number of enterprises, nearly 63 million, as the government mentions as per the database. Out of 63 million, nearly 10 million are formal enterprises. I would say even more than 10 million registered enterprises, and remaining are informal enterprises. So I'm not talking of informal enterprises getting access to bank credit or formal credit and managing their risks. Mainly focusing on the formal enterprises, registered enterprises, which are registered under the GST. But we know that the financing solutions, which is the discussion point today, finding the right financing solutions for MSMEs and managing risks, is the issue which has been talked about for a long time. In fact, having been associated with the MSME sector for nearly 40 years, I would say that we have been talking n number of times about finding right financing solutions. But still today, when we are talking about this issue, there is a huge gap in the demand, in the need for credit, and the availability of credit. As per estimates by the World Bank, some time back, there is a nearly $300 billion worth of gap. I would say almost 30 lakh crore, which is almost double than what is available as of today to the MSME sector from the formal channels, banking system. So what is the reason? Why this gap is not, we are not able to fill up this gap? On the one hand, there is a demand. On the other side, we know that the banks and the NBFCs or other financing institutions are ready to finance. They have liquidity. They have plenty of resources available. It is their business to lend. Then only they can make their livelihood. But still the gap persists. And this gap is not of today. This gap has been going on and on for the last, as I mentioned, many years. Various committees have been established by the Government of India, by various other institutions, the Reserve Bank of India. Expert committees have given their recommendations, starting from Tandon Committee and Chore Committee, Nayak Committee and Kapoor Committee and various other committees. But still the gap has been continuing. So let us give some thought as to what are the reasons and how these reasons can be overcome by finding solutions as to how do you present your proposals and how banks can really mitigate their risks in lending to the MSME sector. So one factor which I have been observing since my association as a banker earlier, and then of course having led a large non-banking finance company called National Small Industries Corporation, which is a government organization, a PSU, but is a NBFC lending to the MSMEs in the country. I find that majority of the MSMEs, I would say 90%, are not able to make proper case for their loan proposals. They are not able to present their credentials. They are not able to present their financial projections. They are not able to present in right spirit their project, their vision, and not, able to convince the lender, the banker, as to why should the banker and the lender lend them and give them money. And they are not able to assure that their money, if given to them by the banks and financial institutions, will be repaid in time. So these are the factors which are primarily responsible. And bankers, of course, would be interested. They are, they are giving money. They would be interested to see that their money is returned back in time. Your project succeeds. You are not hiding things. You are not inflating things. And you are a genuine customer. These are the factors which banker has to look. Of course, they have to see their return and liquidity and security, everything. So these are not very things which cannot be addressed. These are normal things which a customer should prepare, or a any customer. We are talking of SMEs today, but any borrower, any applicant who is seeking a loan from the bank for his business and enterprise should be able to make proper presentation of their case. And the banker, of course, I would say that bankers are interested in lending, but then a lot of them we find that not interested because of the lower amount or the small amounts involved in lending to the micro and small enterprises. They would be interested in bigger enterprises because of various reasons, maybe shortage of time, pressure of work, and less return, more follow-up required in small cases, uncertainty of repayment, or even security issues. They are not able to get proper securities. So these are the concerns which lead to continuation of this gap in the availability of the credit. What is the result? What happens is that a large number of borrowers, applicant borrowers, then finally go to approach, outsiders, consultants, chartered accountants. I'm not defaming chartered accountants, but it involves time and money. Then they have to pay consultancy, preparation charges, and then some of them are able to get through the process of seeking sanctions. I would say the rating agencies, Ms. Mansi is there to tell us, in fact, how rating agencies can help. I would say here comes the role of the rating agencies in bridging this gap, in not only advising the applicant borrower, MSME borrower, as to how do you prepare your case by mitigating the risks which are flagged by the rating agencies, that these are the risks, this is your rating, these are the gaps in financial figures. But also help the rating agencies, also help the lender in giving the correct assessment about the applicant borrower. So they help both. Of course, the charges are involved, fees involved. We will understand from Ms. Kulkarni, in fact, what are the fees and how the smaller enterprises can take advantage without incurring too much of cost. Let me also add here that I, as head of the NSIC, had started a performance and credit rating scheme in 2005. It was a very successful performance and credit rating called NSIC Performance and Credit Rating Scheme for MSMEs, and whereby I think at one point of time, lakhs of units had started getting benefits of this rating at a very, very concessional price of 8,000 to 10,000 rupees, because 75% of the rating fee was borne by the Government of India as subsidy under the scheme. And we saw to it that gradually this gap existing in the availability of credit because of not being able to present your case, or because of the high risk perception of the lender, can be mitigated, is reduced, and it was coming down. I think that last few years, I think maybe 3 years, the rating scheme has been probably kept on hold or withdrawn. But I understand that the rating scheme might be restarted by the government, as I heard from the Honorable Minister some time back. And this rating surely is going to be very helpful whenever it starts. And until it starts, the MSMEs can surely go for their own, rating assessment from the rating agencies or within their own organizations, by understanding as to what is the need of the bankers, as to how do they project their applications and loan proposals. I would say there are three important things before I hand over to Ms. Mansi for the presentation. You have to explain the project. You have to explain the project in its entirety. Project means what is the market? Why are you setting up this project? What is your project doing if it is an existing enterprise? How are you able to serve the society and market your products and ensure that there is a continuous demand for your products? And then also as to how you are able to convince the banker about your financial projections, as to what is your past performance if it's an existing enterprise, and if it is a new enterprise, as to what is your likely performance in terms of top line and bottom line, turnover and profitability over the period of time for which you are seeking the loan. If it is a term loan, naturally you are going to give projections for the period of repayment of that term loan, say 5 years to 6 years. If it is working capital, naturally the projections for the next 2 to 3 years, depending upon the need of the banker, because bankers have different assessment models and different formats for seeking information. So you have to convince the banker with regard to your project, with regard to your financial ability, financial projections, about the repayment capacity, and also about your own credentials. That banker has to see not only the project and the repayment, but also the credentials of the promoters. You should have, you should be able to explain your background and ability to steer that project successfully, and being able to repay the credit, what you are getting. Security, of course, becomes an important element in the entire process of sanction and disbursement. And the bankers would surely insist for getting adequate security for repayment of their loan. But the government of India has also started, in fact, credit guarantee fund for micro and small enterprises, whereby the government provides guarantee up to 2 crores worth of loan. And recently the government announced the emergency credit line guarantee scheme for COVID affected units, whereby the government has agreed to give 100% guarantee for additional funding to the extent of 20 to 30% to the existing enterprises which were availing credit facility from the banks as of 29th of February of 2020, when the COVID started. So it is only applicable to the existing enterprises, not the new ones. So this kind of security is being given by the government of India. But banker has to be really satisfied. So many things, factors come in. Your own project, your ability to convince the banker about the success of the project, your offer for securities, if banker is, if you're not eligible for the credit guarantee from the government, and your personal background and success of the project. In addition, the rating, which will surely be an add-on to this, to the possibility of success of your loan application. So with these introduction, I think now it's time to invite Ms. Mansi Kulkarni, who is a very senior, professional, designated as Associate Director of CRISIL. CRISIL, of course, we all know that it's a very prominent rating agencies in the country. And she is a very experienced professional, more than 12 years of extensive experience in SME division. So yeah, she understands the SMEs very well. And in the current role, she is leading a team of analysts who are primarily responsible for delivering various standardized and customized offerings like SME gradings. I think now For SME, CRISIL probably has introduced another product called SME grading. It's, I think, parallel to rating, which Mansi would be able to probably explain better. And she, of course, has been engaged in all kinds of due diligence, supply chain evaluations, assessments of microfinance institutes, financial health assessments, of course, a lot of other things. Once you are in the rating, naturally you look at 360-degree assessment of any organization. So over to you, Mansi ji, for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for setting the context and giving my introduction. And you have covered various important points about today's presentation. And surely in my presentation also, I'm going to cover the same things in little in detail. So I would be sharing my screen. Yeah, is it my screen is visible?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So very warm welcome to all the participants, and very glad to be part of this presentation. And we believe that this is a need of our specifically post-COVID situations. Things have been very dynamic, and it is important to create that kind of awareness amongst the important stakeholders. So similar presentations are also made across all the stakeholders in the ecosystem, not only to MSMEs, but to the government, regulatory bodies, financial institutions as well. So briefly, I will try to summarize what I'm going to cover in my presentation. So a little bit, I'll spend some time on about CRISIL, although Dr. Kumar has covered to a large extent. I would like to take some time to tell you what are the offerings of CRISIL's offerings in MSME space. How CRISIL has based on our survey analysis, how the COVID pandemic has impacted the performance of MSMEs. What are the key barriers to the MSME growth? Again, given the current context, what is the credit scenario for MSMEs? So at present, how bank NBFCs are actually having the contribution to the book debt of MSMEs. How credit risk evaluation has changed post-pandemic, some of the government recent interventions, and some of our output of our surveys we have conducted for MSMEs. So CRISIL is a major, it's one of the leading rating agencies in India. And in global level, we are fourth largest rating agency. We are owned by US-based company, Standard & Poor's. And these are some of our offices. So not only in India, but we have offices across globe. As you can see on the screen, we have offices in the US, Argentina, Singapore, Hong Kong. So various places we are operating at present. So of course, CRISIL is known for the rating product. But apart from rating, there are various offerings that we have under one roof. We have SME solutions. Of course, I'm going to cover it in much detail, what offerings we have under SME solution. So far to our credit, we have more than 140,000 SME gradings. We have done more than 60,000 channel partner risk assessments. In my further slides, I'll explain what is SME grading and what is channel partner risk assessments that we do. Why it is important for us to mention that apart from rating and SME solutions, we are also offering various products under research, analytics, risk solutions, and infrastructure advisory, is that the entire system work under one roof. So for example, if we are rating any particular MSMEs, the rating of the large corporates has been taken care of. Like for example, if MSME is part of a supply chain and supplying it to a large corporate, a rating for that large corporate will also play a very critical role. Whereas in terms of research, the industry understanding of any underlying industry for which the MSME that we are rating, the underlying industry that they are operating from, the research arm of CRISIL will help us to know what are the benchmarks, how the peer comparison is done, or what challenges industry is going through at present. What are the prospects for that particular industry? Are there any government regulations which are playing role, which will impact the performance of either large corporates or MSMEs who are operating from this particular industry? Again, similarly, all our presence in other aspects also help us to cover our offerings under SME solutions as well. So as you can see, data, research, solutions, everybody work hand in hand. Particularly about SME solutions, we have actually a more than decade of experience now. As mentioned by Mr. Kumar, we started in 2005. We launched. CRISIL was one of the leading agency who, in collaboration with NSIC, launched SME rating, performance rating that Mr. Kumar talked about. Since then, we have been rating MSMEs. So we have a data which is a big data which represents across sectors, across geography locations, across micro, small, medium, so all sizes of industries, all legal constitution, proprietary, partnership, private limited companies. All these databases are getting created, which help us to keep changing our models to the tune of the performance of the MSMEs. So even the models which are inbuilt, which are functioning as arriving at any grading, are also continuously under modification, which suits the current requirement. We have a wide recognition across lenders and corporates. So when we, of course, our recognition amongst lenders is well known because of our rating and the loan requirement. But with corporates, we are actually having a lot of products or a lot of associations with corporates where we, under supply chain finance or any kind of dealer distributor kind of allotment for or selection of dealer or selection of distributors, many large corporates are at present are using SME grading or any other assessment tools that we have designed specifically for MSMEs. So while onboarding any new vendor or new dealer distributor, corporates are actually asking CRISIL specifically from MSME angle, few SME solutions which are customized to the requirement of that particular industry. So for example, Tata Motors will ask the vendor assessment or the dealer assessments getting done from our side. So of course, if the intrinsic model remains same, that business management, financial risk are evaluated. But beyond that, it depends on the requirement of the corporates. These solutions gets customized. Again, in a recent situation, of course, and post-COVID, we have increased our digital offerings also. These digital offerings are basically that are more used at an institutional level. These are very helpful for banks and corporates, a lending institute and a corporate to have some kind of dashboard available with CRISIL where they can upload the information for MSMEs and get the rating done. So these are some of the offering, as Mr. Kumar was asking about SME grading. This is in parallel with what we had, similar to what in NSIC era, NSIC performance rating era, we had very similar rating. Now we are calling it as grading. Again, a CRISIL credit assessment score. On the left side, you can see these are some of the assessments that we do, which are industry specific. So we have some gradings for microfinance institutions, LPG specific, real estate developer grading. So some of these sectors also we try to cover under grading. So because normal real estate cannot be compared with normal manufacturing company, we'll have a specific product which is meant to be designed to cater to real estate, which will range from smaller or medium enterprises to large corporates as well. Again, there are some business verification product due diligence that we do for lending or for the corporates for onboarding vendors, dealers. In terms of franchisee building also, there are strong tie-ups, connections we have with a lot of institutes, legal regulatory bodies, and some industry associations. One of the important thing that we have started 3 years back is Crisidex. So CRISIL's website will give more details about Crisidex, but this is a MSME sentiment index that we, so on the business environment, there are specific surveys which are being conducted for MSMEs to understand which particular like area they are struggling with. To talk specifically about SME grading, it's a 8-point scale ranging from SME 1 to 8. This is again like specifically designed. These grading symbols are specifically for MSMEs. The underlying model that we use are also again built based on our experience working with MSMEs. All the benchmarks are not equivalent to what benchmarks we use for large corporates. The scale for large corporates are AAA to D, which is very different from SME 1 to 8. And sometimes we have seen that there is a confusion. So I thought and I'll bring this point. So while for MSMEs, this is not a instrument specific rating. So we do not really rate any particular instrument or say any facility, bank facility like term loan or a working capital facility. This is general performance of MSME. In this, we try to cover business management and financial performance of a MSME. Whereas in the large corporate ratings or the CRISIL traditional rating scale that we use from AAA to D is specifically for instruments. So it's an instrument specific rating and which is very different from MSME scale. Again, as I said, the benchmarks and the underlying model is very different for what we use for large corporate. So under large corporate, 1 day, 1 rupee default will also give a rating of D. Whereas for MSMEs, we will have, because of the intrinsic nature of performance of the MSMEs, there will be little liberal, like 1 day, 1 rupee default may not necessarily will result into SME 8. So there are a lot of other aspects that we cover. Here, there is a interactions with the management that we do. There are interactions with bankers, suppliers, customers that we do. And of course, there is a due diligence on the plant. So we visit the plant, and a lot of proprietary insights are also there, which are used for the SME grading. So I have covered this more or less, the industry risk, market position, operating efficiency in terms of business management and financial risk that we cover under SME grading. So now another product. So SME grading is there in place right from beginning, that is 2005. Whereas the recent requirement, how the world is changing with low touch base points, and a lot of bankers are asking for specifically for micro segment where they really do not want to, or they cannot afford SME grading. We have come out with specifically for micro or small segment a product called CRISIL credit assessment score, where by submitting very few information like last 3 years financial statement, bank statements, credit bureau, we can arrive at a quick score for the MSME. Of course, these are some of the benefits that we have over a period realized, that in terms of financial assistance, marketing assistance, and self-evaluation. So typically, of course, everybody is known. It's known that SME grading from any rating agency will help you to have a financial assistance, but it can really go beyond that. In our experience, we have seen people using it for marketing as well as for their self-evaluation. Now, talking specifically about the performance of the MSMEs, I think so. This Mr. Kumar has covered to a large extent, so I may not repeat the importance of MSME sectors in terms of the employment ratio or GDP or the contribution to the country's export. An interesting fact which has come out in terms of GST. So GST data is actually showing what is the dependency of MSME in terms of purchases from large enterprises or sale to large enterprises. So numbers are very interesting. Over 45% purchases of small GST registered enterprises are from large enterprises, whereas close to 30% sales of small GST registered entities are to large enterprises. So these are some of the very interesting numbers which are coming out from the GST data. Post-COVID, how the scenario has changed. So we all know that the revenue has impacted, and profitability has impacted, because of which the working capital cycle or cash conversion cycle are stretched today. And specifically, so these are some of the numbers which we are actually based on our research arm. Some of the facts that we are trying to state that, like, we expect revenue to see an optical recovery in FY22. Margins are expected to see improvement by 100 to 150 points. Of course, in terms of NPAs and MSMEs, so currently maybe they are masked because of, like, moratorium or restructuring that RBI has offered, but, like, it's estimated to spike in FY22. Again, during pandemic specifically, promoters were forced to add capital because of, like, a stretch payments from the large corporates, or the high inventory or delay in payments. And that over a period, I think so that will go down. Credit growth in terms of, like, from banking and NBFC segments, the credit growth in FY21 was hampered, but which is again going to return to normalcy by maybe 23-24. In 22, we are expecting 7 to 9% of the credit growth. So these are the numbers again in terms of revenue. So as you can see in FY, like, 17 to 20, on an average, the growth rate was 4 to 7%, which largely got impacted in FY21 to 7 to 10% negative growth, which bounced back in FY22, definitely because of the lower base of FY21. And but if you can see 22 versus 23, again, like, it's a good jump of 11 to 13%, despite 22 being a higher base. These are some of the, like, what we can see on the slide are top performing verticals and the bottom performing verticals. Typically, as I said, like, our research arm help us to analyze these numbers. So for example, any MSMEs are operating out of these top performing or bottom performing, in the entire rating model or a grading model that we design, they will get a particular risk score that we call it as an industry risk score, IRS. So based on, like, what is the current position of an industry, there will be certain weightages given to the industry performance as well. Again, EBITDA margin, as you see, there was quite a big impact in FY21, where, like, it was almost half the operating margins were slashed down. And in FY22 and 23, we are expecting by 23, they are returning to pre-COVID levels. Just to highlight what Mr. Kumar mentioned, like, what are the obstacles, like, because we today know there is a demand for money and there is a supply of money. Banks are ready to fund MSME sector. However, the challenge remains the same, like, what we were talking of. Of course, there are a lot of positive things happening. Markets are getting opened up, MSMEs are getting formalized, but still somewhere traditionally these risks seems to be continuing and which are hampering MSME growth. So some of these things, like, absence of information, credit track record of the promoters, or the confidence of stakeholders always impact, or maybe like, the time it is taking to formalize the sector, I think so it is impacting the credit growth for MSMEs. Again, labor retention and skill building is another challenge. Although, like, there are a lot of schemes government has come out with, say, Make in India, or promoting production or production linked schemes, or these schemes which governments are trying to come out with, the retention of the labor or the skill building seems to be very challenging. Again, delayed payment, although, like, there are a lot of portals which we can see now giving us a lot of data insights about payments getting on time. But however, we believe that still there is a lot need to be done by regulatory bodies to ensure there is a minimal stress on the working capital flow of MSMEs. Again, like, during pandemic, I think so the access to credit, thanks to some of these schemes that were floated, as mentioned by Dr. Kumar, ECHGC scheme, which offered 20% on and above, like, what the current limits were, has really helped to manage the challenge. Now it's time to see whether, like, these loans which were floated during pandemic times are not resulting in any kind of NPAs or a weak loan profile for banking institutes. These are some of the numbers which are we have populated to see if you can see the trend. The first chart which shows how has been the credit growth so far. So if you see the recent numbers for FY 18-19, the growth was around 12 to 9%, which dipped in FY 20 and 21, despite a lot of weak business performances in FY 21. We see that credit growth has not been hampered so much. So from 9% pre-COVID level, the credit growth went down to 6 to 7%, but thanks to a lot of schemes that were floated during FY 21 and even FY 22, we are again coming back to normalcy in terms of credit growth. So again, I think so there is a lot of effort which is put to ensure that NBFCs are also contributing significantly to the lending profile of MSMEs, because banks at the end has certain limitations, or as Mr. Kumar said, maybe banks are too tied up to issue the smaller size loans and micro segment. These are specifically catered by NBFCs, and numbers are promising. Of course, a lot needs to be done. But if you can see FY 15, where only 15% were holding by NBFC, I think so markets are opening. There are a lot of funds are also getting deployed to NBFCs, and we expect that NBFCs going ahead will play a better role in lending to MSMEs. Of course, in September 21, somewhere we have seen there is a RBI financial stability report which shows MSME lending to MSMEs shown a decline compared to, these are annual numbers. So March 21 is typically year-end numbers where year-end we believe that looks a better number than a mid-year number. Now, what happens to the asset quality? Because even though government has tried pumping the money in MSME sector, what we believe that there are a lot of, for example, restructuring schemes that were floated, got picked up during post-COVID times. If you see the right-hand side, the chart on NPAs for PSBs and private sector banks and public sector banks, the numbers are little on a higher side. NPA levels are increasing. In terms of, again, these are the numbers which are coming from the financial stability report. If you look at the metrics that we have put, the low risk categories, as far as the credit track record is concerned or CMR score is concerned, the low risk categories are moving slowly to the high risk categories. So this is comparison between September 20 and September 21 numbers, where you can see that the entities which were in CMR 1 to 3, 67% of the entities were in CMR 1 to 3, but however, close to 33% or 35% of the MSMEs actually slipped down and went to CMR 4 to 6 or CMR 7 to 10. Similarly, for CMR 7 to 10, you can see, although there is an improvement, that's a very minuscule improvement, and most of the players remained in CMR 7 to 10, that is close to 90%. So these are some of the alarming numbers. So the concern remains same, that whether the right assets are getting funded, or are we creating any stress in terms of asset quality in terms of banking system or the NBFC system. So we have tried creating some kind of a slide which will create some awareness on how a rating agency or maybe a banking institute is looking at how they are perceiving the credit risk post pandemic and what has changed exactly. So although whatever you're reading on the screen, it might look like before post pre, also these are basic underlying data remains same. However, I think so the way we are looking at it, the weightages are changing, and post pandemic we have made certain modifications in our model to suit the current requirement. And if you can see, I will take you through some of the data points to explain what I'm trying to say. So now, unlike pre-pandemic, I think so post-pandemic things have changed now. We believe that for MSMEs also, this is not only an onboarding process. The credit risk assessment should not remain only for the onboarding process and should not be restricted only when bankers are introducing the client, but it should be ongoing basis, because a lot of banks are like, once they're onboarded the client, some of the assessments are happening on trust basis, or like, kind of relationship that they're sharing, or like, maybe the kind of security that MSMEs are offering. Uh, we believe that like, because things are so dynamic and changing, the requirement for credit risk it has become ongoing and more frequent. Because even industry, for example, some of our earlier parameter in terms of industry risk, as I suggested, were very quite stable for some time, specifically for some of the industries, if they are performing really well, like, there will be hardly any change in the industry risk score over a period. But post pandemic dynamics have changed, because of demand and supply gap, because of the regulatory changes, because of the, like, the availability of funds or any particular industry, the global environment changing, the import environment changing, like, movements of goods were restricted for some of the clusters or some of the localities. I think so industry has gone through a lot of changes, and the way, like, we perceive it, like, industry risk score, as I said, like, coming from a research arm, is actually getting inputted in our system. Beyond that, like, when you talk about, so again, these are the 4 pillars which remain same, but the way we are looking at, for example, a business risk has become more sharper. Like, maybe price escalation clauses in the agreements have become, like, a great way of looking at things. So for example, as Mr. Kumar was saying, that, like, more and more transparency from MSMEs coming out of these data will help us to arriving at a proper risk and reward metrics. Because in our experience, interacting with MSMEs, some of these things have not been shared with rating agencies or the banking institutions, in terms of like their agreements with the large corporates, or in terms of how they position themselves, or how strategically they are important in any supply chain. I think so more and more MSME take interest in all these conversations, discussions, trying to put themselves, like, how over a period they have seen the ups and downs, and how, like, what position, like, what position they are. Like, for example, are they tier 1 suppliers or tier 2 suppliers? Sometimes in our interaction, we believe that people do not really, like, sit and discuss all these things with us. First of all, we need to understand that, like, there will be a very limited information in public domain which will be available for MSMEs. The more and more we interact with each other, a database is getting created, and I think so somewhere we are trying to, as a system, I think so we are helping MSME sectors to have those kind of transparency as much as possible. So for example, of course, there are a lot of registrations that are happening and things are opening up with GST. There is a lot of data which is available. But still, I think so, because some of our products require one-to-one interactions with MSMEs. I believe I appeal all the participants who are from the sector. I think so these points, like, for example, price escalation clauses in any particular agreement, or your relationship with your labor, or supply side analysis, order book positions, these are some of the critical data points post pandemic, because these are the things which will give us some confidence in terms of, like, what is this sustainable? Are the performances sustainable in adverse situations as well? Are MSMEs are strategically being placed, or is it, like, it's more of, like, a possibility of lesser bargaining power, or those kind of judgmental, or instead of leaving it to the judgment of the rating agencies, I think so the interactions and support from MSMEs will definitely help us to arrive at a proper risk, or like a proper reward strategy for the MSME grading. Again, management risk. When we talk about management risk, some of the aspects, like, what is the market reputation of the management? So around that, like, group structure, for example, or how a parent company can support the subsidiary company, or any particular backward or forward integrations. So now all these discussions, when I think so, people are not opening up, like, okay, I have so many companies and I have backward and forward integrations, and of course we deal with arm's length prices, and, like, we understand as a MSME. So again, like, there will be a lot of maybe loans and funds, loans and advances getting diverted from one company to another company, and I mean, these are some of the things which will be there evident in the financials. But beyond that, if there is any strategy and why MSME is investing in any particular business or the group company. I think so if it is coming from the management, it gives altogether a different flavor to it rather than just saying, okay, money is getting floated. Because then it's a half-cooked information. How we look at is basically when we are rating any particular entity, if it is really supported well in terms of not only financially, but in terms of getting orders or any economies of scale. Like for example, two operating from two different clusters, but maybe sourcing from one party, or because of that they're getting some economies of scale. Or for example, uh, uh, specifically in post-COVID situation where you have diversified sources of money, diversified businesses, one business not doing well, the other business is there to support the other business, because demands were quite different this time, because all those discretionary product, non-discretionary product, or as I said, like cluster based, or maybe some of them are domestic dependent, some are export oriented. Even in export, which are the countries they are really offering their products and how those countries are performing. All these things will actually create a good story for MSMEs to say that they can sustain the any adverse situation. Again, the organization structure, systems and controls, these are again some of the points which are we feel that MSMEs are hesitating to share, but they really play a critical role in the entire SME grading that we evaluate. Financial risk, again, with the help of GST return, uh, there's a lot of again emphasis is given with cash flow analysis, being given the liquidity crunch that MSME faced post pandemic. Also we believe that because of the stretch working capital, your days receivables are getting stretched, days payables are getting limited, some of the places days inventories are getting stretched, and because of that the entire cash conversion cycle is getting impacted. We believe that cash flow system, or maybe the financial flexibility of any particular group or at a management level. For example, if it's a promoter driven company, a proprietary concern, I think so the financial flexibility that a promoter can offer, because we believe that financial health of a promoter is also very important for us to evaluate the underlying performance of the credit performance for the MSMEs. Again, the credit bureau score, not only for the entity or for the MSMEs, but credit bureau score for the promoters will also help us to know the repayment track record of the entity. GST has opened up a lot of information for us. Fortunately, today but again, this is a consent-based analysis that we can do. Only and only if the MSMEs are giving consent to us, we can pull out the GST return information, and which will help us not only in terms of knowing whether the entities are compliant on GST returns, but a lot of their invoice level data is getting populated, and which is helping at the end, it is helping MSMEs that I have diversified number of customers, or my current year performance is far better than maybe what annually because specifically in COVID situation, I think so FY21 was impacted in terms of revenue profitability, specifically in terms of revenue, but I think so GST numbers of FY22 were very promising. So it gives us some kind of confidence. So we go really beyond the annual reports or some outdated data.
Miss Mansi, can I come here? I have certain questions also, and the participants also will have questions. So sure. If we can fast track, please.
Sure. So these are maybe self-explanatory, some of the financial risks that we have looked at. So again, maybe this is again a self-explanatory slide, where we have done a specific industry analysis for these sectors, and each of these sectors we believe have different space by when they will grow beyond. For example, healthcare related sectors are well placed. Of course, it's known to everyone, and export oriented are on recovery mode because of the global markets opening up, of course, and China plus one strategy, which is a lot of being followed by a lot of global market. Again, infra related units, as you can see in the budget also, there are a lot of promising units, which promising measures that have been announced for the infra related sector. Agri-link positive, very positive, because I think so the intrinsic nature of their product that they are offering. Consumer discretionary like electronics and autocoms and bicycle are of course definitely, because of the nature of the demand, is going to take a longer time to recover. So again, like maybe some of the recent interventions that government has done. So
Actually, these are in the public domain already.
correct.
So I think we can skip that because they're all, people are quite aware about what is happening in the
Correct.
MSME space.
Correct.
So
These are like some of the, maybe we have tried covering what is the importance of ECL GCS and how like it has performed really well in FY21. Again, we have tried covering something on account aggregators, because I think so. What is account aggregators? Like maybe known to everyone. This is also available in public domain. But account aggregators are basically who are going to keep all the data which are like available, and of course consent-based data, which will get a depository, kind of like a repository with account aggregators about your. These are some of the. Currently, only bank accounts, insurance policy, and pension funds data is getting stored in for the account aggregators. But over a period, we believe that a lot of these data are going to be available with account aggregators, and that is going to change the dynamic of this segment. So again, like as I said, like there's a continuous interaction that we do with MSMEs. So in terms of like there are some of our surveys which are talking about production volume, order book profitability. You can see these like we have come out with some index which shows like in 37 that like that was the 37th index in Q1 FY21, how the pandemic has impacted. But if you see, we are far better now. Q3 FY22 is estimated to have like better performance. Again, like some studies on digital transition. So as I said, like a new age financing, there are a lot of fintechs which are coming for funding the working capital requirement in terms of supply chain finance or bill discounting or factoring. I think so. MSMEs are on the like we believe that like post COVID it has forced MSMEs to accept a digital world, and their acceptance towards digital transactions and digital information storing has improved, and it will play, I think so, a critical role going ahead, given like there are a lot of offerings specifically for micro and small segments from fintech companies. So that's it, Mr. Kumar. That's it from my side. Maybe I can take questions.
No, thank you very much. I think it was a very exhaustive presentation. Lot of knowledge, lot of information, and the question that I raised in the beginning as to how this gap of almost 30 lakh crore can be bridged. These are some of the indicators that Mansi shared with us, and hopefully I think a lot of information, new information has come into being. So I had some specific questions before I ask Sudhamini and Zumair to tell us which are the questions that the audience has raised. Before that, let me ask few questions, Mansi, if you are willing to answer.
Sure.
So first is, what is this SME grading vis-a-vis SME rating? Because banks are asking SME rating. I mean, they're not asking SME rating, they're asking for rating. So do they accept grading in place of rating?
Yes, they accept. It is just a nomenclature that has changed. I'll tell you the background towards it. We are actually SEBI regulated entity. So it is quite regulated by SEBI in terms of our performance, in terms of what data we are taking from all the corporates and like other uniformity across rating agencies. Recently, 2 years back, actually, they have come out with a notification where our rating products. So for any rating agency, the rating product where it is like there is a involvement of lot of confidential data, because like specifically for listed companies, where there is a confidential data available, they have asked all rating agencies to have a separate legal constitution from the for other offerings. So as I said, CRISIL is into advisory, research, global analytics, data management, everything. So they have asked specifically to have a different rating company only which are catering to the large corporates, because there is a lot of confidential data which is getting given by the for example, before they come out with IPO, there's a lot of confidential data which is getting into the system. So what rating agencies have done, they have segregated their rating and non-rating products. So when I say rating, it is more like towards a large corporates where the confidential data is getting used. So as far as CRISIL is concerned, CRISIL Ratings Limited is actually offering a rating to large corporates. And as far as the MSME is concerned, because this is more specifically to the performance rating, it is getting covered under CRISIL Limited. So now if you go to website, you can see there are two legal entities. One is CRISIL Ratings Limited, which is taking care of large rating of large corporates, whereas CRISIL Limited will take care of SME grading and all other research, advisory, global analytics.
So in nutshell, when the banks are asking for rating,
these are SME grading.
Beyond a certain limit of say 5 crore or 10 crore, depends on which bank is asking how much under the Basel requirement, they will accept the grading, SME grading, isn't it?
They will accept CRISIL rating.
CRISIL rating or CRISIL grading?
CRISIL rating.
So I mean, then what is the point in SMEs going for grading?
Yeah, because whoever is not coming under BLR or Basel II requirement will get a SME grading.
No, if they are not compelled by the banks, then they will not go for any grading, because they are only going for rating when banks are asking for rating.
So bank, we have recognition. I mean, to just mention, we have onboarded Bank of Baroda who are asking for SME gradings, which are not necessary that it is only a bank loan requirement or Basel II requirement. Banks want these analysis to be done by the third party rating agencies for them to lend to priority sector also.
Okay,
which is
but
beyond Basel II.
But for banks need for bank loan rating, that is the rating, not the grading, which is done.
Correct.
Isn't
Correct.
it? Okay, that is clear. And second thing is, what are the documents? I mean, I can't say that you will inform me all the documents, but then in the rating that we had introduced, we had only fixed 4 documents. So what are the different documents that you asked for from the SMEs?
So typically it will be a 3 years financial statements along with auditors comments and 3CB, 3CD, whatever is applicable. Tax audit reports. We typically ask for ITR returns of the promoters as well. We ask for the whatever is the consent based. So for example, a bureau report is a consent based analysis. So we ask for bank statements, 6 months bank statements. We ask for if there is a consent, we extract credit bureau information for the promoter and the entity. Then there is a site visit which is being conducted and a management discussion which is happening. Apart from that, there will be a proper KYC documents that we do, for example, partnership deed or certificate of incorporation to just verify few of the details, PAN card of the entity. And of course, if it is a consent based, we extract certain information. We can extract from the GST report analysis also, as well as whatever is available in public domain. So basically, from the MSME level, the requirement is to minimal have 3 years financial statements and bank statements and some of the KYC documents.
Okay. So do you have any other department or an affiliate or maybe a franchisee or any department unit or something which helps the SMEs to prepare and present the loan documents to the bank?
No, we are not into rating advisory. So there are some of the industries which are maybe some entities are floating around which are into rating advisory.
Okay. No, I am not asking for the rating advisory. I am asking for providing help or consultancy or advisory for submission of the loan proposals.
There are TEV reports that we prepare.
Okay.
But these are large value assignments. So TEV and assignment is typically, so for example, SME grading is towards standardized product, which is in the range of 35 to 40,000. Whereas TEV reports will be much larger and even the period that we take for TEV assignments are much larger.
No, but TEV will be for the bigger companies, I suppose. Okay. And I think you indicated earlier, but let me ask you specifically as to what is the fee that CRISIL charges for grading normally?
They said 35 to 40,000, 35 for SME grading.
I think it's quite reasonable, yes. But for rating, how much is the charge? Say, 20, 30 crore company, turnover company?
that team only will be able to help you.
Okay, okay. So I am through with the question. Zumair and Sodamini, in case there are any questions from the audience, please let us know.
Sir, I think most of the questions are already being covered, but there's just one gentleman asking Mansi to throw some light. Can Crystal help to get the credit assessment for the customers? But I'm not sure whether his customers are it B2B model or what exactly he is saying. So could you please take up this?
I didn't get the question actually.
He's
No,
asking, can Crystal
yeah.
help to credit assessment of the customers?
Let me explain, Zumair. Mansi, what he is doing is they may be supplying material to their customers on credit. So he is asking whether you do the credit assessment of the customers also. I mean,
Yes, yes.
their own customers.
Yeah, yeah. So as I said, like in my presentation also, there are a lot of supply chain assessments that we do, a lot of assessments that we do for corporates to onboard vendors, distributors, dealers, and these are across sectors. Like, so prominently what sectors we are actually currently catering are pharma, auto dealership, FMCG. So these are the sectors where dealer distributor kind of or a vendor kind of setup is very prominent. It's called an institutional business where a corporate approach us and they would want us to do some kind of portfolio analysis for their customers and their suppliers and vendors, dealers, distributors.
Thank you. I think we come to the close of this program now. So if there are no more questions, so let me hand it back to Zumair. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. Thank you, Ms. Mansi Kulkarni, for that insightful, detailed discussion and the ocean of knowledge that you have imparted with us. And I hope the participants must have got very useful insights from this. And in case we get any question post-event, I will be sharing those queries with both the speakers today for their experts comment. And with these words, I thank again our speakers, all our audience, and have a nice day. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mansi. Thank you. Thank you, Zumair.
Thank you.
Thank you.